So hey guys, it's Tamara coming back at you with another video. Welcome back to my channel. We're going to start this week off by talking about mental health disorders, and there's a few that I want to talk about, and then I also want to give you guys some knowledge at the end of this series, which again I post on Wednesdays as a bonus. I typically post only Mondays and Wednesdays, but during this series I'm going to be posting some Wednesdays. You're going to get a video here and there on some Wednesdays, but for the most part you can bank on Mondays and Fridays. So these videos are going to consist of learning about different mental disorders, and at the end of the series I want to focus on educating you to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. And I want to talk a little bit about how one-sided it is. I want to talk about the political part about it. I want to talk about how it got started and where we are with it, and why it's creating problems for private practice providers like me. So in this video we're going to talk a little bit about depression and bipolar disorder, and I want to clarify those two disorders and give you some practical knowledge. These are going to be short videos because they are basically like crash courses, but they're going to be very, very brief. So I just want to give you guys the foundational knowledge that you need to understand each disorder. So the benefits for you in this video today is that you're going to be able to contrast bipolar disorder and depression, and I want to talk just a little bit about what those characteristics and symptoms are. So let's go ahead and jump into what depression is. We'll start with depression. So in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, we have a few categories of depression. Major depressive disorder is basically the political term in the diagnostic term. We have mild, moderate, and severe. We also have partial remission. We also have full remission, and then we also have recurrent. And basically what that means is you can have major depressive disorder, but it could be mild, moderate, it could be impartial or in full remission, right? You could be in the recovery stages. Or we have major depressive disorder, severe, with psychotic features and without psychotic features. And basically what that means is you have a major depressive disorder, it is severe, and it is accompanied by psychotic symptoms. Those psychotic symptoms could be hallucinations, right? So hearing things that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, smelling things that don't exist, right? Gustatory hallucinations. And we will talk about psychotic disorders as we move along in this series. But feeling things on your skin that's not there, and feeling things crawling over you or crawling in your hair that's not occurring, right? Or delusions, believing things firmly and having a conviction about them, even when it's completely irrational, or even when there's no proof, you hold on to that belief, right? That's a delusion. So you may have depression that starts out mild, it may transition into moderate, and then finally get to severe category. Or you could have depression, in the reverse. You could have depression that's severe, then becomes moderate, and then ends in mild depression. Now, the most important thing to keep in mind about depression is that everybody exhibits depression differently, right? You're not going to show the same depression as Kathy over there or Bob over there, right? You're going to have different symptoms. But let me give you a rundown of what those symptoms are. So when you are concerned that you or somebody that you love or know may have depression, you want to look for inconsistent patterns of sleep, sleeping too much or not enough, inconsistent patterns of eating, binge eating and restricting a food intake, right? Or not eating enough or eating too much. You want to look for irritability. Some people have what's called irritable depression. They're not sad, they're not tearful, they're just mean, they're irritable. Everything in life gets on their nerves. You want to look for impulsivity and restlessness, right? So not being able to sit still or even pay attention for long periods of time. You want to also look for feelings of anhedonia or lack of motivation. Anhedonia, which I'm going to put over here for you, anhedonia is basically a loss in pleasure in things once pleasured let's try this again. So anhedonia is a loss of pleasure in things that you once enjoyed, okay? There's also low motivation. There's also learned helplessness. I'm going to post that link up here so that you can go and check that video out. There's also an external locus of control that usually takes precedence in someone's life when they are depressed. And I'm going to post that video over here for you. But basically what that means is you believe that everything in your world is controlled by external forces, that you have no individual personal power over those things at all. You believe that somebody else and something else is controlling just about everything in your world, and you feel helpless. That's external locus of control. You want to look for low self-esteem. You also want to look for suicidal thoughts. Now, there's two kind of suicidal thoughts that I encourage most people to look for. One is passive, meaning the thoughts are not direct, right? There's no plan, or there might be a somewhat of a plan, but it's not cemented, or you have a fear to act out on it, but it's passive. I wonder what life would be like if I died. I wonder if my mom would miss me if I killed myself. Those are passive death wishes. Now, the next one is direct, and that's, I want to kill myself at this time, and here's how I'm going to do it. That's a direct suicidal thought. So you want to look for those two things, right? A passive death wish or a direct suicidal threat or thought, okay? So that's depression. In a nutshell, that's depression. Now, let's move over to bipolar disorder. So there are 3 kinds of bipolar disorder, and I'm putting it this way to make this video very practical. 1 is bipolar 1, 2 is bipolar 2, 3 is cyclothymia, or there's another way to pronounce it. I've heard people say cyclothymia, I've heard people say cyclothymia, however you pronounce it, right? That's the 3rd category of a very mild case of bipolar 1 disorder, okay? So bipolar 1 and bipolar 2, what are we looking for? Well, with bipolar 1, we're looking for depression, we're looking for mania, so this high level of energy without the ability to regulate one's mood, racing thoughts and flight of ideas, right? Here's an idea over there, there's an idea over there, there's an idea over there, right? It's like you can't stay focused on one thing. Your mind is just like a little bit all over the place. There's also a sense of restlessness and helplessness as well in bipolar 1 and 2. That's the depression part of the disorder. What you want to keep in mind with bipolar 1, bipolar 2 is you fluctuate, right? You swing from depressive, suicidal, helpless, restless, inattentive, depression stage to this side. We're swinging, so we're manic, we're happy, we're funny, we're humorous, we're living it up, we're energetic, like life is wonderful, everything is great, right? You know, the way that you can think about it in the most practical terms possible is to think of somebody who's intoxicated by caffeine, somebody who has had a complete central nervous system jump because of caffeine, right? If you drink so many cups of coffee a day and you are so bouncy that you could look like you're possibly on drugs, that basically is bipolar disorder in the manic stage. Okay, you're just completely out of control. Your thoughts are all over the place. You're manic and wired all the time. And then the other part of that disorder is swinging over to being depressed, okay, and not being able to function. And so it feels like that person's on a constant roller coaster. Bipolar 2, I want you to consider that the more mild bipolar. So the mania may be like a little jump and some energy and emotion. It may be like a little jump in some, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a little bit of a jump in your energy, in your excitement about life, but then you're back down again, right? That's bipolar 2. You may not hit rock bottom with bipolar 2, and you may not hit the ceiling with mania with bipolar 2. Bipolar 2 mania is considered hypomania, meaning that it's not hitting the ceiling. You're up there, but you're not quite hitting the ceiling. And you may get depressed, but you're not quite hitting the ground. With bipolar 1, you're actually hitting the ceiling and you're actually hitting the ground, okay? That's the best way to keep in mind the two differences between bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. All right, guys, thanks so much for being with me today in this video. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did and found it helpful, please give this video a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button if you want to stay tuned for some of the videos that I'm going to have in the future. We're going to talk about schizophrenia and some psychotic disorders coming up here real soon. We're also going to talk about post-traumatic stress disorder And I also want to point out some other conditions that you guys may have never heard of before. We're going to talk about delusions, hallucinations. We're going to delve into some pretty interesting things. I also want to talk a little bit about suicide at the very end of this series. So stay tuned, guys. We're going to really delve into some of these disorders and pull them apart. All right, guys, thanks so much, and I'll see you really soon. Bye-bye.